So this zina culture could also be carrying these slogans. She asked for it. Sometimes it is a sick-minded person. This girl is not inviting me towards something like that, but they say, wo ladki thi hi aisi. And that is why this guy ended up into adultery or went after her. No, it's not that. The Prophet ﷺ and the companions, they lived in a society which was an open society, but they worked on themselves. So there are going to be times when you're living in such cultures, some places where it is difficult, but you can still work on yourself and there are ways to do it. Again saying that boys are boys. लड़कों की तो होती है, 2-4 affair तो होते ही हैं, कोई बात नहीं. Sometimes a girl who gets married comes back to her family feeling disappointed and trying to tell her parents, family members, I just saw his laptop or his chat, his history, the kind of activities he's indulged in, I'm not happy. And they say, कोई बात नहीं बेटा, लड़के करते हैं ऐसे, ठीक हो जाएगा. So this is something through which we are again encouraging that wrong culture. Then sexually explicit jokes. We need to be very, very careful about these areas, because the more you joke like that, obviously your mindset goes towards that. Then tolerance of sexual harassment. I would come up with sometimes students who would ask me that if I'm working somewhere or I am working on a project and there's this guy, or he's much older than me and I think he's trying to harass me, what do? I tell them scream. And they look at me thinking I'm joking. And I'm like, no, I'm not joking. Or if you don't want to scream, you can just say, are you trying to make a point over here? Are you trying to give me a message over here? That person would say, nahi, main to aisa nahi hu. Why are you thinking like that? So at least he's going to become careful. Never hesitate. Whenever you have a feeling of discomfort with someone, either take a break from there, involve your mahram over there, or you just outright tell that person, I'm so sorry, I am not interested in this. Gendered violence in movies and television. That is again, something which is leading us towards this thing. And there is always a debate by the people that we should show all these evils which are happening in society. This is considered tashihul fahisha. Why do we have to show a whole 30 episode series on rape or sexual harassment? Why can't we just simply give out the commandments in a more beautiful, dignified manner through Quran and Sunnah and guide people towards what is there in Quran and Sunnah, help people work on their iman and taqwa, and then guide them towards step of how they can refrain themselves from it. The only thing that you see in any drama series which is on sexual harassment or rape or any such challenge is that the girl was innocent and she was not following anything that we see that is there in Quran and Sunnah. Sometimes they would even show a very sharif girl who is clad in a burqa, but she is not going around with a mahram, or the society is not providing her the protection that is there in Quran and Sunnah. They are not pointing to all those areas, but they would tell you, look, this girl was raped or harassed, and then in 30 episodes the whole issue is dragged, and it feels like it brings you to that point, so frustrated, sort of telling you that, what do you have to do when there is a rape or there is sexual harassment? You know what you have to do? Join an NGO. Raise your voice. Come out in public. Talk about it. Excuse me, what about a proactive approach where you work on all those areas which are there in Quran and Sunnah which could protect you, minimize all these challenges? Again, all the concept that we have talked about so far and whatever is there in Quran and Sunnah, nobody talks about those. That's a big challenge. We as Quran students need to have vision for that. Whenever people tell me about a certain story like that of an abuse or something and it comes out as a hot TV drama, so I tell them, did they tell you that this girl when she was going out, she was missing out on all these elements? Why did she go out with a non-mahram? She shouldn't have. बाइक पे आराम से उसके साथ बैठ गई, अकेली उसके साथ यहाँ बैठ के उससे बात कर रही है, छुप छुप के उसको मिल रही है, innocent manner trying to explain something to him. Why do you have to do that? So all these moves are wrong and not according to the principles of Quran and Sunnah. Then defining manhood as dominant and sexually aggressive, and defining womanhood as submissive and sexually passive. Islam doesn't allow us to do that. Tells us men have to be the qawwam and women have to be salihat. And having said that, they are not dominant. They are the ones who have a protective role towards their families. And females, they are not supposed to be submissive. They need to have assertive role as well. So all these challenges, they then, bring out the worst in the society that we see. Imam Qayyim ibn al-Jawzi over here tells us that when we don't put a stop over there, we don't do anything about adultery, then we move from one perversion to another. Why? Because the mentality gets more insensitive and more sick. So the punishment of the married adulterer is derived from the punishment which was set by Allah for the people of Lut. Because adultery and homosexuality are both illegal sexual acts. They both have evil consequences which oppose the wisdom of Allah in His creation and His command. I was so amazed when I went through this book a couple of years back. And this is written in the times of Imam Qayyim ibn al-Jawzi many years back, when homosexuality was not legalized. But he gave a chunk in his book talking about perversions as well as homosexuality. If I go back in my times of when I was a student in medical college, we used to have one chapter in our community medicine. It was back in 1980s. And in that chapter, there would be about all the perversions related to sexual acts, which will include homosexuality as well. Hardly few lines on any one of them. And we used to feel sick reading them. We never knew these things existed. And our teachers would not actually teach us, but tell us, read this once, you might get one of these topics in the notes, and you can even miss it out. Like it was thought not to be important. But now, these are the things which are legalized. And these are the concepts which have been highlighted properly with warning in Quran and Sunnah. And these are the topics which have been taught by the scholars with the warning that do not indulge into adultery, into zina, because this is going to lead you towards more perversion. And our society, how come we have legalized homosexuality? Because we have moved far beyond adultery and zina, far beyond those love affairs, far beyond a relationship, haram relationship between a guy and a girl. And now, because we didn't set a limit over there, so now we are not able to set a limit even in these areas. And the reality of homosexuality is, it's total insensitivity for haya. Because nowadays, when I remember like a couple of years back, I would say, the guys, please don't hang out with girls, hang out with your buddies. Girls, please don't hang out with guys, hang out with your pals, your friend. But now there is so much scare of homosexuality over there. A lot of girls, they do come up and say, oh, I'm either in a hostel, I met this girl and we were just sitting and talking and she was making moves like that. What am I supposed to do for that? In the Western cultures, as a Muslim, because if it's legal, you can't go out and say it's wrong. I have seen so many of the friends I know who are in a mess. They're like, if we teach our kids it's wrong, they go out in this school and they say, well, my mom told me it's wrong or my dad told me it's wrong. So the teacher would take you to the office. They might even call in the police or the legal authorities that you are turning your kids against the law. I mean, it's a very tricky situation. So once I asked Ustaza, what are the parents or the families supposed to do? For one thing, they have to educate their kids. Like, we were taking this lesson for kids 5 to 7 years old, and we were teaching them stories of the prophets. And many times what I've seen is that people, when they're teaching younger kids, they would miss out on the story of the people of Lut alayhi salam. What are we supposed to tell 5 to 7 years old about homosexuality? But in Western cultures now, they are actually having storybooks with same-sex parents, teaching to 5 to 7 year old kids, bringing them to this mindset that if you go out in the society and you see same-sex parents, you have to accept them. So if they are teaching stuff like that, why can't we teach our kids this is wrong? How do you teach them? We need to tell them. That's how we narrated the story, that this is about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created men and women so that they can marry each other. They come to a certain age and a man marries a woman. Then we told them that there were people of Lut, what they did was, a man said, no, I want to marry a man. And a woman said, no, I don't want to marry a man, I want to marry a woman. You know why they said that? Out of desires. Because from the very start, what they did was, they never followed the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they followed their desires. For everything they would say, I want to do this, I want to eat cake, I want to eat ice cream, I don't want to sleep, I want to do this, I want to do that. And they never followed the domain of halal and haram. So ultimately they came to this point that they said, I want to not have a relationship which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained, but I want to be with a man or I want to be with a female. That's all we told them. Because if you start telling them about desires, what are halal, what are haram, so ultimately they reach a certain point, they would be acceptable for that. Now the big challenge is not only that a big chunk of the Western culture have accepted it, legalized it, but another big danger for us is that we have a huge chunk of Islamic youth, Muslim youth, who have soft corner for them. Unka kya kasoor if they are like that, if they are feeling towards same sex? I remember I was gathering somewhere, I was invited as a guest. I delivered my talk and I came out in the other room to pray my asr, and two transgenders, they walked over there. It was about female right or women day or something like that. They said, we need to ask you something because you're an Islamic figure. One of the transgenders said, what does Islam say about me? I tried to talk in a medical way. I said, Islam says is what you need to do is you need to run your tests. If you are predominantly male, you act like male. If you are predominantly female, you act like that. It's a simple thing. So this transgender said, no, I have a male body, but I feel like a female. What am I supposed to do with that? And the other one supported that transgender saying, is bichari ka kya kasoor? And I was actually for a minute, did not know what to say because that was my first interaction like that, someone asking me on my face. So I just made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and I said, actually, the point is, Islam gives us a very important and solid structure. So if we keep following that structure, we don't fall into such dilemmas. Problem is, over years, we have loosened up that structure. And we have come to a point where we have followed our desires so much that we ultimately have given way to whatever we want to do. We need to understand there are two things in our life in every situation that we have. One is what I want to do. And second is what is the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what I want to do is according to the principles of Quran and Sunnah, go ahead and do it. But when I want to do something is going only with my desires, my whims, I need to put a stop over there. Like there could be some people you would come across who would say, I'm a male and I have feeling towards male. I'm a female and I have feeling towards female. It could be there. These are desires. Like some people have desire for chocolate. Some people have desire to listen to music. Some people have desire to watch movies. Some people have desire to just procrastinate. But what do? Do we follow our desires? No. We put a stop to those desires and we do something which is more positive, constructive and productive. Our religion tells us to control our desires. If you control your desires from the very beginning and you streamline them, then they always get suppressed in a way that we become more healthy. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a structure in brain which is called basal ganglia. You need to read that book on the power of habit. And it explains that concept that every time we think about something, we make it a habit, there is a layer like an onion ring in our brain on the basal ganglia. And if we work on that, we realize that this habit is not right habit and I need to do something better. And we work on that. So another layer appears on the basal ganglia which helps us move towards something which is more healthy. So there is no modesty in this homosexuality. Prophet ﷺ said, a person who repents from a sin is like one who has no sin. Imam Qayyim ibn al-Jawzi is talking about all these things, adultery and homosexuality and everything, and then brings in this hadith. Why? Because there are going to be so many people who will be reading this book, getting to know this concept, and they had been involved in something like that. And then you feel like a loser, and you think to yourself, I'm so bad. I have been doing all this. I have been feeling helpless, or you can't come up and talk about it. So he says to us over there, remember there is hope for you as well. Like in Surah Zumar, verse number 53, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Say, O my servant who has transgressed against their souls, despair not of the mercy of Allah, for Allah forgives all sin, for He is often forgiving, most merciful. And there could be a situation where somebody else would come up to you and say, I had been involved in homosexual act, or I had been doing zina. So don't give them this horrific expression, astaghfirullah, I thought of you as such a pious person and you are a criminal. No, remember, Allah forgives, and you bring them towards hope. You bring them toward mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should not be relaxed on evil, because if you are relaxed on evil, then there is no repentance. Then Allah will not change the bad deeds into good deeds, because you are not even intending to do anything about it. Such person is not going to be allowed in paradise. His evil deeds would be added, and at the time of death will be prevented from achieving any good end. Once Sufyan al-Thawri wept all night, and in the morning it was said to him, is all this because you are worried about sins? Then he took a handful of dust and said, sins are of less value than this, but rather I weep for fear of a bad ending. So there are so many aspects that we need to cover when we are not able to work on ourselves or sins. And there is a sad story which has been given by Imam Qayyim al-Jawzi in book Dawai Shafi, where he says there was a man who would get up on masjid's top and he would make azan. Just the neighbor's house, there was a very young, charming, beautiful girl, and this was a Christian family. So he would keep looking at her. Obviously he wouldn't lower his gaze. So ultimately he started developing this attraction for her. And ultimately he told her that I'm in love with you and I want to marry you. And this girl said, I'm Christian, so if you want to marry me, you also have to convert to Christianity. And for the love of that woman, he converted to Christianity. The day they got married, he went on the rooftop to get something, and he slipped and fell from there. And he died as a Christian, not even having a relationship with his wife. This is the message, or this is the moral of the story, that we need to be keeping very good guard on ourselves. When you look at homosexuality, it's the most evil deed, because there are uncontrolled desires over there, and the punishment for this is also very severe. Allah or His Prophet ﷺ did not set a prescribed punishment for such evil act, and that it is an act which is neither favored nor measured by the human nature. So majority of the scholars and represents the overall opinion of the companion is there is no greater evil deed than that of homosexuality. This comes after polytheism and also perhaps that of killing. So we know Allah never tested any nation in the world before the nation of the Lut with this great sin, and the worst punishment came from people of Lut. They were overturned, they were turned upside down, they were rained down stones, and then they were buried deep into the sea. The Prophet ﷺ said, Allah has cursed the one who does the act of Lut people. And then we have so many verses in Quran, like in Surah Al-A'raf, verse number 80. وَلُوتًا إِذْ قَالَ لِقَوْمِهِ أَتَأْتُونَ الْفَاحِشَةَ مَا سَبَقَكُمْ بِهَا مِنْ أَحَدٍ مِنَ الْعَالَمِينَ. We also sent Lut. He said to his people, do you commit lewdness such as no people in the creation ever committed before you? So in the times of Sahaba, they would either burn them, throw them from the highest building, stone them, or ultimately kill them both. I'm not going to go into the details, but you can even Google and find out all these homosexual communities. Whenever they say it's genetic, so far no gene has been identified. And you can see the impact of homosexuality coming down 50 years from now, when people will not have any kids. And then the diseases, HIV and some other diseases, are going to be on rise. They have even made these studies where they say the lifespan of the people is shortened apart from all the diseases. The kids who are living with these homosexual parents, they experience more problems, psychological problems. There are a lot of views on this, that it is something which needs to be avoided. And then they are into many, many challenges. So basically, what we need to do is, if we are not streamlining our thought process, then we are ending into a lot of mess. There will be more challenges like incest, then relationship with animals, and more perversions will be coming our way. So it boils down to, like, if you look at it, this is dunya. If we have a whole timeline over with us. A very small chunk is dunya, where all we have to do is control our desires. And then there is death. This will give us glimpse of our result. And then it is forever and ever akhirah, which is lifelong lifestyle. And this is something that we need to look forward to rather than investing heavily in our desires in this dunya. And the saying is, it seems we always desire the things that will destroy us in the end. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.